Here's something nobody tells women about retirement, and it might completely change how you think about the next chapter of your life. For decades, the conversation around retirement has been dominated by one question: do you have enough money? And while that matters, there's a whole other dimension that most financial advisors will never bring up in their office. Because the timing of when you step away from your career doesn't just affect your bank account. It affects your sense of identity, your relationships, your health, and honestly, your will to get out of bed in the morning. So today we're going deep on a question that millions of women are quietly asking themselves but rarely get a real answer to. When should women retire to actually be happy? Not just financially secure, but genuinely, deeply satisfied with their lives. And what I'm about to share might surprise you, because the answer is not what most people assume. Let's start with what the research actually tells us, because this is where things get really interesting. Studies consistently show that women experience retirement differently than men. Not better or worse, just differently. And those differences have enormous implications for when the timing is actually right. Women are more likely to define themselves through relationships and purpose-driven work. They're more likely to experience what researchers call identity disruption when they leave a career, especially if that career has been a central part of who they are for decades. This means that for many women, retiring too early can actually be just as damaging as retiring too late. Here's the first insight you need to lock in. Happiness in retirement is not primarily about age. It's about readiness across 4 key dimensions. And most conversations only ever talk about one of them. The first dimension is financial readiness. Yes, this one matters. Women on average live longer than men, which means retirement savings need to stretch further. Women also historically face wage gaps throughout their careers, which compounds over time in the form of smaller pensions and lower Social Security or retirement fund payouts. The financial piece isn't just about having enough to survive. It's about having enough to genuinely live the life you want. That's a very different calculation. The second dimension is what we call social readiness. And this one is often completely overlooked. Think about how much of your current social world is tied to your workplace. Your colleagues, your daily conversations, the sense of being part of something. When that disappears overnight, the emotional impact can be severe. Research on women's well-being after retirement repeatedly shows that social connection is one of the strongest predictors of post-retirement happiness. Women who retire into a rich social life tend to thrive. Women who retire into isolation often struggle deeply, regardless of how much money they have. The third dimension is identity readiness. Ask yourself honestly, if someone at a dinner party asked what you do, and you couldn't mention your career, what would you say? If that question fills you with panic or emptiness, it might be a signal that you're not yet ready to step away, regardless of your age or your savings account. This isn't a weakness. It's just information. And the good news is that identity readiness is something you can build intentionally before you retire. The fourth dimension is purpose readiness. This is arguably the most powerful one. Study after study links a sense of purpose to longevity, mental health, and overall life satisfaction. Women who retire and immediately move towards something, whether that's volunteering, creative pursuits, traveling, caregiving, entrepreneurship, or community involvement, consistently report much higher happiness levels than those who retire away from something. The distinction matters enormously. Are you running toward a vision for your future, or are you simply running away from burnout? Now, let's talk about some specific timing considerations, because context matters here. If you're in your late 50s and you're asking this question, the research suggests a few things worth considering. Women who retire before age 62 on average report higher rates of financial anxiety and lower long-term life satisfaction, unless they have very robust savings, a clear sense of purpose waiting for them, and a strong social network already in place outside of work. For women in their early to mid-60s, this is often where the sweet spot starts to emerge, but only under the right conditions. If your health is good, your finances are solid, you have a vision for how you'll spend your time, and you've been intentionally building your non-work identity and social world, then this window can be genuinely life-changing in the best way. Women who retire in this range with those pieces in place report some of the highest well-being scores across all age groups. But here's the counterintuitive twist. Some women are actually happiest when they keep working past 65, not because they have to, but because they genuinely want to. And there's no shame in that. If your work gives you structure, meaning, stimulation, and connection. Stepping away from it prematurely isn't virtuous. It's just unnecessary loss. The happiest women in retirement research aren't always the ones who retired earliest. They're the ones who retired on their own terms, with intention, and into something that genuinely excited them. Now let's talk about some of the psychological traps that derail women's retirement happiness, because avoiding these could save you years of frustration. Trap number 1 is what we call comparison retirement. This is when you decide to retire because your spouse is retiring, or because your friends are retiring, or because someone told you that's what you're supposed to do at a certain age. Retirement timing based on external social cues rather than internal readiness is one of the biggest predictors of post-retirement regret among women. Retirement timing based on external social cues rather than internal readiness is one of the biggest predictors of post-retirement regret among women. Actually produces significantly better well-being outcomes for many women. It allows for a more gradual identity shift, maintains social connection, keeps cognitive engagement high, and provides a financial bridge. Trap number 3 is postponing the life planning until after retirement. This is the retirement planning trap that nobody talks about. Most people spend enormous energy planning the financial side of retirement and virtually no time planning what their actual daily life will look like. And then they get there and discover that free time without structure and purpose can feel surprisingly hollow. The women who thrive in retirement start planning how they'll spend their time, who they'll spend it with, and what they want to contribute, years before they actually retire. So what's the practical takeaway here? Let's make this concrete and actionable. If you're 5 or more years away from a potential retirement date, your most important job right now is to start building the non-work foundations of your future life. That means cultivating friendships and community outside of your workplace, developing hobbies or interests that genuinely energize you, clarifying your sense of purpose, and doing the financial groundwork to understand what your realistic options look like. If you're within 2 years of a potential retirement date, the questions to ask yourself are these. Do I have enough financial runway to live well without chronic money anxiety? Do I have a genuine social world waiting for me that doesn't depend on my workplace? Do I have a clear and exciting vision of how I want to spend my time? And am I retiring towards something I want, rather than purely away from something I don't? If you can answer yes to those 4 questions, the timing may well be right. If you're already retired and you're not feeling the happiness you expected, know this. You're not broken and you didn't necessarily do anything wrong. Retirement adjustment takes time, and research shows it can take up to 2 years to fully settle into a post-career identity. The bottom line is this. There is no single magic age at which women should retire to be happy. The research points clearly to readiness over age, and readiness is multidimensional. Financial security matters, but it's social connection, a clear sense of identity, and a strong sense of purpose that do most of the heavy lifting when it comes to genuine retirement happiness.